Alright, I am back with a new video because there's actual news going on for once. Not really in the game because we are still sort of just doing Solstice and there's not a whole lot else going on except doing the interference mission for lore every week, so no real updates there, but Bungie is starting to talk more about Beyond Light, and specifically they had a bit in the Gamescom stream where they did another Stasis trailer, and then they uploaded a page full of Stasis information, and then promised future reveals about each individual subclass, which are coming or starting in about a week or so. So they're starting to trickle out information, and it seems like we're actually going to have some stuff to talk about in early September here, as we all try and forget that Beyond Light itself could have been out in like 2.5 weeks before the delay. But, you know, we take what we can get, and it is what it is. So hopefully we are definitely going to make that November date, but we'll see. Bungie also released some B-roll footage of the Stasis powers in action, some of which is in the trailers, and then there's some actual gameplay that I'll be playing as I talk here, which shows how the supers and the powers actually look in-game. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with all of it. They've been considering like ice subclasses for years, and this has been a common community request that you're like, you know, what if there was a fourth ice subclass? And like now it's happening. We're technically not allowed to call it ice because ice is frozen water, and this is like frozen darkness or something. But I'm gonna call it ice. I don't care. I have nothing else to call it, so it is what it is. DCP wants me to call it cosmic ice, but that's just adding an extra word, so I'm not gonna do that. The new trailer showed off specifically more of the superpowers, and it also named the subclasses. So, oh god, I should have written these down. Warlock is Shadebinder, and that has a sort of ice staff that's very Gandalf-ish, where we've seen a couple things it can do. I think we've seen the least from the Warlock out of all the classes. It's got this sort of like AoE slam thing that shoots out a shockwave that shatters enemies. And then you can use staff as during your super, it like shoots out ice projectiles. The staff also might be tied to your melee in that subclass, because I keep seeing it used in first person, so I'm wondering if ice projectiles are also just a part of the core kit without using a super. I'm still a little confused on that, but I'm hoping to see more of the Warlock once they do the larger reveal. For Hunter, we have the Revenant subclass, which is probably the coolest name, and we saw a little more of its ice kick, you know, slashing, throwing super, and it seems like it could be a combination of sort of like Blade Dancer, where you're just like moving around slashing, but also you can throw the axes for damage on enemies too. And I'm wondering if this is like part of the new way you upgrade subclasses, like maybe there's a node you pick where it allows you to throw the blades, or a node you pick where it allows you to just like slam the blades and use them as melee weapons. So there seems to be a lot of potential there. There's one scene where a hunter's throwing like a stasis field grenade, which slows enemies, and then he ricochets some stasis throwing stars off the wall to freeze and kill enemies. There was actually a lot of Crucible gameplay in this trailer, and that has everyone kind of wondering how Stasis is going to work in Crucible. I'll go into that in a little bit, but we'll end with Titan, the behemoth, which has a kind of, it looks a lot like Thunder Crash, where you're running around and slamming and charging and stuff and freezing enemies and shattering enemies as you do it. It does look a little bit like a reskin compared to some of the other ones that seem a little more new, but probably different enough where it still seems like a lot of fun. Bungie has promised that whatever the new Titan melee move is, this Ice Punch is like one of the craziest melees they've ever designed. We saw it a little bit in the trailer, and it seems like a version of the overhead slam move from Middle Tree Striker right now, except it also like freezes and shatters enemies at the same time. So that seems pretty OP, and I'm wondering if they're going to pair like an exotic with it to do something even crazier. So that looks cool. In terms of the Crucible stuff, because that was such a highlight of everything they showed, It does have people kind of wondering how Stasis is going to work in Crucible. My thought is that if people are doing Stasis moves or doing Stasis damage to you to the point where you're frozen, I don't foresee a situation where you're just going to be like locked in place, unable to move until you're killed. I think if you're frozen solid, you are just already dead. And then people will use your corpse to shatter it and do stuff then. So I don't think we have to worry about being stuck. Slowed, we will definitely be slowed. And that Stasis field grenade in particular has me wondering if it's going to feel like those really annoying fallen mines that just like slow you to a crawl in that sphere for a couple seconds. And I'm a little worried about how that's going to feel both in PvP and PvE in terms of taking stasis damage and being, because I mean, how annoying is it when you're slowed by even one of those frozen cursed thralls? And like, I hope that's not something that's going to be coming up all the time. That would be not great. I would not love that. I had an idea last night about if they change resilience to be anti-CC. So maybe the higher your resilience is, the faster you can get out of slowing effects or the less they affect you. Because Lord knows resilience is borderline useless now. I just thought that would be something somewhat clever they could do with it. We'll see how it works in practice. One thing we did for sure learn about Stasis is that it's not just like a stylish cosmetic thing to shatter enemies. If you shatter a frozen enemy, the shards shoot out and do damage to other enemies. So it seems, especially from the footage, it seems like you can have a kind of chain effect where you shatter a group of enemies, and then they do damage to each other, and then more enemies freeze, and more enemies shatter, so that's pretty interesting. Another thing that seems to be floated around is that it seems possible that Destiny may have adopted something somewhat Anthem-like in terms of how Stasis works as a gameplay system, where like you freeze an enemy and then you shatter an enemy, and like that's like a process you kind of repeat, and that's something we've seen in a lot of the footage. And this is reminiscent of Anthem, where Anthem has primers and detonators, where on your Javelin you might have like a flamethrower that will prime an enemy, and then you shoot a rocket at a flaming primed enemy, and then it blows up for like a special paired combo, which does like, explosive damage and a good chunk of damage there. You can make fun of Anthem all you want, but that was actually a really fun, really gratifying combat system there. And I don't know if that's exactly how it's going to work here, because we saw some footage of just people like just gunfire shattering enemies. So I'm not sure if there will be a detonator dedicated move that is like what you need to actively shatter an enemy or not. We don't really know the full details of how that system is going to work yet. And yet, it was a good idea, and it's something I could see implemented for both Stasis and possibly in other subclasses in the future, if they end up redesigning them. So I think there's a lot of cautionary lessons to be learned from Anthem, but it did get a few things right in terms of its combat, and I think that could be an interesting kind of fun mechanic to play around with in Destiny to some extent, where some weapons even were primers and detonators. Like this actually started in Mass Effect. I think that's where they first started experimenting with primers and detonators, but I would think that could be an interesting concept if ported into Destiny to some degree, but we're getting a little ahead of ourselves to say that's like definitely happening. I'm just sort of getting echoes of that from the footage we've seen. After this, we are getting 3 stage reveals. I think they start on September 1st, where every couple of days they're revealing, or they're going more into depth about the different subclasses. I forget the exact, I think it's Warlock, Titan, Hunter, and then so it starts at the 1st. I think by the 8th is the last one, so that week will be kind of all these different reveals. They haven't shown off, they seem really focused on Stasis. They haven't shown off much else about Beyond Light. I mean, we are still 2.5 months out from it, sadly, so I'm not super surprised about that. And I'm sure we're going to get a lot more about it as time goes on. We've only seen one armor set. We released an image of what appears to be a bunch of the destination weapons. We saw a glimpse of a Callus-looking sniper rifle in the Stasis trailer, which has everyone freaked out. It's like a beloved reskin or something. I heard rumors it might be the pinnacle weapon for the season, but we don't have any actual information or confirmation about that, and it was just shown for like half a second. It did make DMG comment that they are not selling Eververse legendary ornaments anymore, so it could be an earned ornament. It does not seem like it'll just, it's a flat beloved reskin, probably a new weapon. So I don't know, we'll see. But we have very, very little information about the actual like loot and activities and things in Beyond Light outside of just there's a raid and there's a new planet and then Cosmodrome's coming back. Like we still know very little. I'll be curious to see how much they actually tell us by the time Beyond Light actually gets here, and that is going to be coming out during a truly insane week, as we know, where now Call of Duty is confirmed it's coming out the same week, Cyberpunk, Valhalla, and then the new rumor is that both consoles are going to be coming out next-gen consoles are going to be coming out in early to mid-November, which would bring even more games like Godfall, Miles Morales, so Beyond Light is going to have to do some fighting for real estate there. I do think everyone is very excited to play Destiny 2 on console in 60 FPS with dramatically reduced load times, I'm assuming, on both systems because of the SSDs they're using. So I also think some of the games on that list may end up being delayed. I guess I won't go into my theories on all that right now, but it's certainly possible given the situation we're in. But I know anyone who cares about Destiny will probably prioritize that over pretty much everything except maybe Cyberpunk, just because that game is so huge and looks so cool. But we'll see. I will check back once we start getting in information about the different subclasses. I'm going out of town. I don't know if I'll be around to do videos on each individual one, but we'll see what happens. And then, hey, maybe something will actually happen at Reset this week. I'm not going to bank on it, but it's possible. This is around when the season was kind of supposed to be drawing to a close, so maybe they scheduled something for then to kind of make up for that as sort of a bridge. Or they could just be doing flat Solstice for a full month, and that's all we get. But in-game stuff, the only thing we know after this is Festival of the Lost in October. We have no idea of anything happening in September, pretty much, so my guess is we see a surprise or two buried in there. Nothing big. I'm not expecting anything like crazy, like a secret 0-hour mission or anything, but maybe something with the interference quest, or we pick up that evacuation exotic quest again. So we'll see. But it's going to be a long 2.5 months, but at least we're starting to get reveals now, so that's cool. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.